Hello everyone. Today I'm going to do a poetry reading from The Smokehouse Boys by Shauna McCovey. I'd use this poetry reading to provide awareness of issues faced by people belonging to the Indigenous nations, also known as the First Nations. The age group this activity is appropriate for is intermediate young adults, age 15 through 18, because some of the poems deal with substance abuse. Some techniques I've learned about poetry readings from the Inside, Outside, and Upside Down of Children's Literature by Jennifer Schneider includes reading the poem several times to better understand the flow and meaning. Another useful technique includes breaking up the poems to allow multiple people to read the poem, or having everyone read along as one person reads the poem aloud. I would use this activity somewhere that allows me to read the poems in a way that everyone can hear without disturbing other library patrons. At the public library, a room set aside for library events would be perfect for this reading. The audience for this reading would include anyone interested in hearing a few poems written by a Yurok and Kurok poet, preferably high schoolers who may not be aware of how hard living in America can be for Native Americans. The goal of this reading is to introduce young adults to poetries from a culture different than their own. Also, the reading will address some of the difficulties that people from the First Nations face. I chose this collection of poems because it reminds me of when I first learned to like poetry, up north in California's Humboldt County, where the Yurok and Kurok tribes reside. The first poem I'm going to read is called The Smokehouse Boys, and is dedicated to Beezy, Jumper, Jack, Ross, Delmer, and Boyd. This would be a good poem to break up in chunks for multiple readers because it would sound like many people of the community talking about the Smokehouse Boys. 1 part smoke, 2 parts shadow, 1 part whispering wind, 2 parts sharpshooter, 1/2 singer of the old deerskin dance songs. They call them the Smokehouse Boys. Hanging out by the smokehouse is one of their joys. Reach in the water, pull it up and in, white bellies flopping, shining skin. It must not drown in the thin night air, a quick thump ends all despair. They call them the Smokehouse Boys, for whom salmon changes their shape. 1 part antler hangings, 2 part heart eating, 3 parts spotlighters, 1/2 hero. They call them the Smokehouse Boys, and they carry their dreams home on their backs. It races across the ridge like a ghost, the one that got away, they boast, who's white and had red gleaming eyes, but what they saw was no surprise, because they are the Smokehouse Boys, and sacred animals are drawn to them. 2 parts mountain, 2 parts river, 2 parts hot-headed warrior, 1/2 lover of Indian women. They call them the Smokehouse Boys, for whom women give more than their hearts. Find a bowl, pack it tight, light it up, pass it right. The only clear thinking is unclear, the only thinking place is right here, and you'll find them after the first rain somewhere down by the smokehouse. Okay. The next poem I'm going to read to you is called Religious Freedom with a question mark at the end. And when they talk about Ling, they're referring to Ling versus Northwest Indian Cemetery Protection Association, which is a Supreme Court case built around building a road through sacred grounds. And also when they say opine, they're referring to the word opine, meaning to express an opinion. Okay. The supreme law of the land is this: if sacred land lies within government lands, they are no longer sacred and in the government hands. Ling admits injudicious disgraces, other religions mean nothing, and the stern black faces of the court and their exceptional ruse, we Indians, they opine, are but sad fools. So what does a poor Yurok, Kurok, or Talawah to do? Find comfortable place at the end of a pew. Okay, this next one is called Declaration. And this poem could be a good poem for reading out loud once and then repeating with multiple people at the same time, because it would give a more impact to the message of the poem. Death and alcohol are frequent reservation lovers. Now only a fool believes in one without the other. Okay. I have 2 more poems to read to you. This next one's called Blue-Eyed Indian Boy. And when they say FBI, they're referring to an acronym that refers to full-blooded Indian. Little Indian boy with big blue eyes, you are not a freak, but a recipient of one of those recessive genes that makes you no less Indian than the little FBI who called you an FBO. They see he didn't know a thing about DNA, but he knows everything about PAIN. And this last one is called food stamps. My mother, in her youth, thought she could pay for the restaurant's meal with multicolored food stamps picked up at the county welfare agency. It appeared logical buying food with food stamps, seemed reasonable to think they held monetary value. It made sense until every patron in that greasy diner laughed. Okay. And that was a poetry reading done by me, Mark Orner, for my LT140 library class.